Friday, November 12th, 1982. Grandma Royer is 83 years old. Tell us when you were born and where and what happened.
I was born in the house over next to us here. And I don't know what time of day time, but when I was born, the doctor thought Mother was going to faint. And so he turned to take care of her and laid me on the bed, and I fell on the floor. And that stunted my growth. That's the reason I never got big. So, then I grew up to be a big girl. My father's name was Albert Franklin Henning. He was one of 7 brothers, and he was one of the younger ones. And my mother's name was Alflora Idella Lutz. She had a twin sister whose name was Honora Arabella. Mother was 36 years old when she got married. She was born down in Carroll County, and they moved down on the farm about 2 miles straight south here, as it was called the Lutz Homestead. Mother was a family of 7 sisters and 6 brothers, all grew up and lived over 70 years. It was all over 70 years when they died. So Mother was the youngest of the girls, and she had 3 brothers that were bachelors, never got married. One brother lived in Kansas. His name was Alpheus James, and that's why my brother that's where he got his name. And I was named after my 2 grandmas. Grandma Henning was Quinter Louisa, and my grandma Lutz was Catherine. And so that's where I got my name, Louisa Catherine. Quinter Henning was a minister. He preached in the Reformed Church on East Tuscaloosa Street. He preached German in 1901 and 2. I think he died in 1902. They moved out here on the farm, right west of us. That's where my father lived all his rest of his life. My father taught school, and I don't know I forget now how many of his brothers were school teachers. My mother's family, then I'll tell you the names of them. Her oldest sisters, well, I don't know whether I can tell them all in rotation, but Elizabeth Ann, Margaret Jane, Melinda Catherine, Alvina Luella, Marietta Isabel, Honora Arabella, and Alflora Idella. And the boys' names were Willis Willer, Eddie McCurtis, Alvin Kenton, Simon Zelotis, Reuben Zelozing. That was their names, all of them. I don't know where they got the names. I don't know. I sure wouldn't know. But there's some of their names. When I went to school at Centerville. We always went to Centerville School. My father went to Centerville School. I went to Centerville School. Robert, Geraldine, Virginia, and Doris all went to Centerville School before they consolidated the schools. One of the tricks that Donald and I played on the Alpheus, we had a chair that only had 3 legs. And so one time Donald and I said, let's play a trick on the Alpheus. So we said to the Alpheus, let's race and see what's going to beat the table first. And so, of course, we let him beat. He beat to the table and he stood under the table. And Donald and I stood there to eat our supper. That we had to stand behind the table beat. Because we played a trick on the Alpheus. But we let him beat anyway. He got to the table first. So then I went to school over here, and I always played the piano because I took piano lessons and could play pretty good. So always, anytime we had entertainments, we'd have entertainments in the winter especially at school, and I always played piano, and the children march up on the platform and sing and have a program always in the evening. One time I played a trick, I was kind of mischievous, and one time we always go up in front of school to recite. And so I got at the edge of the recitation bench. And of course, when the rest of them come, the bench was full. So I put my foot up on the little chair, on the stool, or a chair, seat, side of the bench, and I give it a shove, and shove somebody on the floor at the other end. So then I had to stand in the corner. Yeah, then I turn around and make faces at the rest of them, so they'd have to look. Then we'd have picnic on the 4th of Washington's birthday. And of course, when we didn't know it, they did it to surprise us. And a lot of times we didn't know it. And our mothers would pack our lunch, and when we'd open our lunch bucket, well then there was just cookies or something in it. Because the neighborhood would come in with a picnic dinner. We'd always have picnic dinner on Washington's birthday. And we'd go sledding so much. We had a bobsled and we'd take it to school, and the road would be just one streak of ice. And we'd get a whole load of children on the sled, and we'd go flying down the hill, clear over almost up the Wills Lane. So we like to do that, and then when you sing Jingle Bells, I tell my grandchildren now, I said, Quinter and I and Alpheus were going to Sunday school. I remember one Sunday we were going down the San Cradle, what the San Cradle Road now is, and we was going down there and got almost to 3:30, and we got into a drifted bank, and we got upset. We got upset. So we got out and picked up, we had soapstone in the car to keep our feet warm, and we had a lot of blankets because we was just not in cars or sleigh. We had this open sleigh, and so we got out, we put the sleigh up in the road again, and picked up our blankets and soapstone and everything, put everything back. The horse had Jingle Bells on it. We got back in the sleigh and went on to Sunday school to church. And now when you sing Jingle Bells, you think about Grandma Royer, riding to church and got up there in the sleigh, just exactly like it said, in the sleigh box. And it was wonderful. And then we'd get sled loads, great big bobsleds with 2 horses, and go to different places for an oyster supper in the winter. That's the kind of parties we had, the kind of fun we had when we were children and when we were young. And then every Sunday afternoon, we had to read one chapter in the Bible before we was allowed to go out and play. So we'd sit down after Sunday, come home from church and dinner was over. We'd sit down and read a chapter in the Bible, and then we'd go out and play prisoner's base. And we'd play domino in the evening. In the evenings, we'd have a party or we'd get company or anything, we'd get apples up, and we'd make popcorn, and we'd have apples. That was the kind of entertainment we had when we was young. Our mail carrier was, first, it was Grandpa Royer, Henry Royer, and then Harvey Royer was our mail carrier, and when he had a substitute, it was Quinter. That's where I met Quinter. He was our substitute when Harvey didn't carry the mail. And we had a dog. We used to have a dog at home that when he'd get in the yard, and he'd watch the mail carrier coming up over the hill at Anthony's up here, and as soon as the dog would see the mail carrier coming, he'd run down to the mailbox. And then the mail carrier would give him the mail, and he'd bring it up to the house. That was our pet dog. And so, of course, then I met Quinter, and then I worked for Harvey Royers, and they had 2 of their children. And of course, they lived right on Elgin Street, and Quinter lived on Broad Street, and he'd come through the alley there when he went uptown. And I would see him when he got through there, and then he would substitute mail carrier for Harvey. And then I'd go down to the mail box different times, take mail down. Of course, I'd always go barefooted. He knew that I went barefooted because I'd always be barefoot. And that's how I met Quinter. And we started going together, and then he went into the service. And he was in the service for about 2.5 years, I believe. Anyway, he wrote to me, and I wrote to him, and he sent me a couple of silk handkerchiefs and things. And then this spring, when my cedar chest got rotten or got wet down the basement was wet, my cedar chest got wet, and of course a lot of these things then got mildewed, and I had to burn them. So that's the end of the handkerchief. But then, when he came home, we started going together. But we had our first date after James one Saturday evening was our first date. And so I had Hazel Yoder, a girlfriend of mine, and that's Joe Yoder, a county recorder's sister. She went with me, and Quinter's cousin Jim Clapper. We went to Alliance and got a tender. And then we took Susan home, and then we took Jim home, and we started home, coming down the Swallow Road. And it was in March. The roads got real muddy in the daytime, and then at night the farmers would get their sled out and the horses, and they'd scrape the road, and then it would freeze. And then, of course, it's pretty solid somewhere, it would be frozen. And so we were coming down the Swallow Road, and up there we got up to Miller's Lane, about halfway between the Louisville Road and Georgetown Road. The back wheels dropped in the mud. So we knew we were stuck. So we got out, and we picked up Quinter's got out, and we got the shelf out, and we checked the one tower up, one side of the back end, and then we went out to that cornfield or that field, picked up stones and filled up that hole, and then we jacked up the other side, and we picked up stones until we got that hole filled up, and then we got out of there. So we started on down the road, and just before we got to the Georgetown Road, all four wheels dropped in the mud. So then we got out of the car, and we walked home, and as we was walking home, the sun was coming up in the east. We walked home, and I got Alfred out of bed, and he fixed to harness the horses, picked up the stone boat, and took Quinter down and pulled his car up, and he got home in time for his folks to go to church. That was our first date. So then Quinter said, "You want to try it again?" And I said, "Well, we worked together pretty good that time." So we went together 4 years before we were married. And I gave music lessons. And then during the war, I worked at Timpton. I worked at Timpton Roller Bearing from, maybe right after Christmas until spring. And wore overalls and worked in the grinding room, grinding out cups. Once in a while we'd get one a little bit, we'd have to stick it down in the cupboard. And then when the boss would come around, we'd have to clean out our cupboard once in a while. Find out that we had some good ones. So that was, and then I just started giving music lessons, and I gave music lessons for about 2 years. One summer I had 55 people. We were married the 13th of March, 1924, and then we were married on 13th because that was on Thursday, because Mama said that you don't want to get married on Friday, that's Nigger's Day. So we got married on Thursday the 13th. On Friday, of course, was Quinter's birthday. We went down to Robertsville to a pastor, and we're married down there. And her sister lived with them, and so was she with our witness. Donald took us down in the car. We had to go around by East Canton because the roads were bad, and it was paved almost the whole road. And so we went down to Robertsville, and then coming home, Donald gave us a package home. That was our wedding present from him. And we spent our honeymoon at home, Papa, Mama, and Quinter and I, visiting in the living room. And our parents, my mother gave us silver. Mother and Dad gave us a set of silverware for our wedding present. And then we had a belling to come and bell us, and we had a belling supper. We gave them oyster supper for the belling supper.
What's that?
That's the belling supper. They come and bell us. After we got married, they come around and make all kinds of noise and bell us. And so that we would go out and we gave him a supper. And Robert was born August the 7th, 1925. Geraldine was born December 23rd, 1926. Virginia was born December 25th, 1928. Doris was born July 1st, 1931. Madeline February 20th, 1934. And Glenn July 9th, 1936. And of course, during the person, it was pretty hard to get along, and Mother was with us. There was 9 of us at the table each. And so I know during the Depression, my husband had a little Ford Roadster without the top. He had it when we were married. It had a top on, but I don't remember how come, but it didn't have a top on it anymore. And he would go to work on the WPA, and he'd go in his open car, he'd bundle up real good. And then in the winter, how the children were growing up, while we parked our car right east of the kitchen. And a lot of times in the winter, when it was real cold and bad, we'd get out to go to work, and the car wouldn't start. So I'd have to get the children all up, and we'd go out here and we'd push the car down through the yard. for him to get the car started till he got down the road while the car maybe be started if he could go out to work. And that was the way. And of course, I know that during the operation one time, we just wondered what we were going to have to eat. And my cousin Van Knox in Robertsville, and his wife came with a couple of sacks of groceries. And that certainly, it cheered us up. So we were just so happy about what we took. We just didn't know how we were going to get along. And people complain now, but the Lord was always with us. And all of our children, I dedicated every one of the babies to the Lord before they were born, even though I wasn't a born-again Christian yet. But I did trust the Lord enough that I would dedicate every one of them to the Lord before they were born. Reverend Sellers, when we had an evangelist, and Sellers was our evangelist, and he preached salvation message really good, and a bunch of us that went forward to accept the Lord. I know then that I knew that I was saved. And Geraldine went forward with Robert, and so we accepted the Lord then. And then when Robert was old enough to go to service, I told our children we had gone to camp with the gospel center people. And so I told Geraldine and Robert and Virginia they were old enough to join church, and I wanted them to have a church home before Robert went into service. So I wanted them to pray about it and decide whether they wanted to join church. So they decided to join the Camp Gospel Center, and so then I went out there right then too, and took Madeline and Glenn, and Doris stayed over at Quinter with Dad. And it wasn't long then till Mrs. Odell said, let's put Doris in for secretary, and get her to come out there too. So they put Doris in for secretary, the young people, and it wasn't long till she came out there, and then Dad came too. So we were all in one church instead of two churches, like we did for 17 years. We'd go one church one Sunday, another church the next Sunday. Every Sunday we'd go different churches like that. And I can't think when the happiest day of my life was, but of course the saddest day was when Daddy died. In July the 11th, 1981, and was buried July the 14th. And he was born December 16th, 1896, and was 85 years old when he died.
Hey there, today is July 28th, 2003. Christy's our wonderful photographer, and we're at PJ and Julie's house in what city?
Danvers,
Massachusetts. And we're here with 4 of the Royer girls, and we're going to ask them some questions. Question for you. First of all, I need you to introduce yourselves. Tell us, there's how many children in the family?
6.
6. Okay.
6.
Is there someone older than you?
Bob, yes, his birthday is August 8th. He was born in 1925. And I was born, I'm hysteric. I was born in 12, 23, 25. Sorry, 24.
And I am Jenny. I was named Virginia May Royer. I was born on Christmas Day in 1928. And I'm called Jenny, of course.
And I'm Doris, and I was born July 1st, 1931. And that's what they called me, Doris, because I don't have a nickname.
And I'm Madeline. I was born February 20th, 1934. And then we have a younger brother, Glenn. And Glenn was born July the 9th, 1935, I believe. Did everybody get
Right.
Yeah, okay.
So, Anthony, you want to start? Let's hear about your parents and tell us what names, what their occupations were.
Okay.
Start with just Grandpa's name, and then maybe my mom can do Grandma's name.
All right. Our father's name was, well, there's a little discrepancy. I think I remember him saying that his name was James Quinter Royer, that he was named for a man named James Quinter. But later on, I don't know. He says it's just Quinter, but at any rate, our father worked steady. I think he worked all through the Depression, except for maybe a couple of days at Superior Switchboard and Device Company. He was a welder. Worked very hard. He worked the swing shift. Sometimes he worked 7 to 3, sometimes 3 to 11. And I think that was a hard thing to do, but he was very faithful. So that's, I guess you can talk about Mom.
Well, and Dad's, where he worked was 5th and Schroyer, Southwest in Canton, Ohio. Yes, and it was steady, and I remember that he didn't get high wages, but once in a while they would give him a turkey at Thanksgiving time. I remember him bringing turkey home one time, and Mom cried. She was so happy. Anyway, Mom's name was Louisa Henning Royer. She did all kinds of things to try to make a living, to help us have a way to grow up. She hung wallpaper. She went out and picked apples at Leaper's Orchard. She went over to Schweitzer's and cleaned eggs. And I don't know, what else do you remember her doing? Madeline? Jerry? Jenny? She just did anything she could.
Oh, she
That's
taught
right.
piano before she was even married. She had a lot of students. She had bought herself a Model T Ford.
Yeah.
Right.
One of the first ones that was around. She
Had to
enjoyed
back
that.
up the hills.
Yeah. Gas got low, they had to back up the hill so it would still run. It was interesting.
And people used to want to know why she didn't give the children music lessons too. Because here we were, 4 girls. She never had time. She did what she could to try to bring money in so that we could live. So we never had music lessons.
Oh, that's wrong. We each had the first one.
Oh,
at least.
pardon me.
at least 16 times, I think, that first lesson. Because she would turn over a new leaf. Now I must teach you children how to play. That's how she would say. Our mother was a remarkable woman. In every way, she was faithful. She was fun. She had a sense of humor like no one else.
That's really good. But for Grandpa, did somebody say he was a medic in World War One?
Do you
Is
remember
that right?
that, Jerry?
Yes.
I don't remember.
I believe that that's right.
In fact, I think at the shop where he worked, they called him Doc.
Doc.
When they'd
yes.
have little accidents or
They
something,
did.
they
Call him
always
first aid man or something
yeah,
like that. Yes.
they
If
take their
someone got
And
hurt.
he'd clean their wounds and put bandages on them.
and he'd be the ones to take care of us when we'd fall down and scratch
If
you
you
were
were
there. Yeah.
And you know, when someone at the shop needed to go to the hospital, he took them. He was the one to take them.
He was the ambulance way before there was were ambulances.
Right. He surely was.
Did Grandma and Grandpa work together doing anything?
Oh, sure.
Surveying.
That's right. I remember, and they worked as a team. Dad did the figuring, but Mother was always there, helpmate, like she always was too. And they would go out surveying. But some of us I got the choice deal of typing up the descriptions. And I remember he'd say commencing at a point at so and so, and
So
from
many
then
feet.
on, and half the things I didn't know about, and I wasn't supposed to make a mistake either, which was tricky.
That was before computers, you know. You had to do it with a typewriter. Of
Yes,
course, she was the only
Manual
one who could
typewriter.
type, I believe.
I don't
Weren't you?
know.
I
sure
remember one time Mother and Dad went surveying and they needed help, so they asked me to. I didn't know anything about it, but I did what I was told. I mean, so I guess I'm a surveyor at heart too.
Oh yeah.
And our father, he didn't have formal training for that. I think he learned from his father,
And
and then he studied. He studied a lot, and then he took the test, and that's how he did it.
Speaking of Grandpa's father, do you remember your grandparents? Aunt Malin?
I remember Grandpa Royer, Henry Royer. He used to come over. We'd have get-togethers, and he ate peas with his knife. I think he put them on his knife. I don't know.
Maybe.
I don't know how he did it, but that's one thing he did. But
Was there a Grandma Royer? Did he have a wife? She died?
I never knew her.
I didn't either. She died before I was born. Do you remember her, Jerry?
No, I don't
One
remember.
Christmas.
Grandpa Royer. I mean Grandma Royer. No.
I
never.
remember, I'm sorry, when I was born, or when I was young, I just had two grandparents. There was Henry Royer and then our grandmother, Flora Lutz Henning. And she lived with us from the time I was 3 months old, just when our grandfather died. So-
There were 3 bedrooms in the house, 6 kids, Grandma. Grandma had her own room.
Yeah.
And 4 of us lived together. 4 of us were in one room with 2 beds with enough room that you could walk between them. So we had 2 double beds in one room, and that's where we didn't mind. I mean, that was just the way we lived and grew up. So we didn't have many closets either, but Grandma had her own room, and she used to sit inside the dining room on a rocking chair, which I think Shelley has that one now. Or do you have it? You have a rocking chair in
I have the
Mom's.
rocking chair from Grandpa Royer's office.
Oh, well, Glenn used to have that rocking chair, and he just gave it to Shelley. Anyway, she'd sit there with a card table in front of her with a puzzle. On the card table, we'd come home from school at night, sometimes we'd stand there at the card table. Maybe that's where we got our
Love puzzles.
love of puzzles. And we never looked at the pictures then. We just put the puzzles together, and we love to do it now, except some Saturday evening post ones.
Aunt Jerry, do you remember the address? Lisbon Street, who remembers? Anybody?
No, I don't remember.
56 50, I guess I don't.
9546?
It was RD to Louisville when we were growing up.
Right.
That's why we don't know a number. And then they changed it and gave us a number, but I don't remember. 9546.
Oh,
don't
I
remember.
have that. I have that
Sounds
in my
good to me.
address book.
You do?
Yes. I do.
Did you get to help work inside and outside the house?
Do we get to
Aunt
help?
Jenny, did you get to help very
Do we
much?
get to help? My choice was always inside. I hated hoeing those long rows of potatoes and
Corn.
all of that stuff.
Sweet potatoes,
And of course, if we didn't grow a lot of food, we wouldn't have had any food to eat. And so it was a real necessity. But some people were better outside than others. And if I could, I chose the work inside. My sisters now are different, I think.
Mom, what'd you do?
I don't know. I don't even remember that I liked working out there. I remember we pulled weeds. And Mary Catherine Bowman used to come over and help sometimes, and Mom and Dad would give her a penny a row for pulling weeds, and we had to do it for nothing. We didn't like that too much, but we did. We had a truck patch that went up the hill besides our regular garden. So
Was
we
your
had a
garden
lot of work
small?
to do. We had to work.
No,
How
everything.
big was the garden?
Oh,
Garden.
I don't know how big.
I don't know.
Big?
Feet,
Yeah.
very
Huge.
No tractor, rototiller?
No.
big. Hoes and cultivators. Mom had a thing she planted with. What do you call it? It just had a wheel and it had a.
Dorset Madeline has.
I know. So
Big row.
she push it and make the row. Then we'd plant the seeds, probably with our feet we covered the rows, I think. Put fertilizer
I
on.
don't know. I don't remember. But then, remember how pretty it would always look? Because then she put the cultivator thing on the thing that we made the rows with, and then it was
She
always
cultivated.
pretty. She'd go in one way, and then the next row she'd go another way. And it always made it look pretty.
That was after
Once
we got
the weeds out.
Yeah. There were weeds.
And Jerry, what did you do when you planted seeds? Did you do it like everybody else, or did you have to stand on
They
there?
tease me all the
When you
time.
planted corn,
Tease me all the time about planting corn. I said I planted it and then I stepped on it. I don't recall.
3 seeds.
Three
and I think
seeds in a thing.
She just.
Oh, and when you were talking about our grandma and grandpas, I remember Grandpa Henning. I was 2 years old. In their house, they had a lot of people. I imagine it was all the relatives. And I think Grandpa Henning was about ready to die. And I couldn't imagine all these people around here. But I remember I was 2 years old. And his bed was here, and I was standing here, and I couldn't imagine what was going on. Then he died.
But you remember him, see?
Yes,
That would be right, because he died when I was 3 months old.
and Aunt Jerry, when he died, did they take him to the funeral home?
No, no. When people died, then they would go and stay at your home overnight, and it would be sort of spooky,
And the body was there in the
Body
home, and
was
people came
there,
there
I
and
know.
visited.
Yes.
Did you end up going to the church?
Yes, we went to church afterwards. I remember when Grandma Henning died, I was 16 years old, and I had my hat on, and the veil, and I thought, nobody could see my tears. I can cry all I want to. They could see through that veil. They could see. But it was at Robertsville Reformed Church, and we had to walk down the aisle. Do you girls remember?
I remember having the casket in the living room,
Grandma's.
and that's where they came to pay their respects.
Yes.
They didn't have anything like what we call around here a wake,
No.
so.
So growing up, did you guys all get along? How about cutting hair and all the beauty stuff? Did you have fun doing that? Did you ever fight at all? Did you share clothes? And no problem. What did you fight about the most if you fought? Mom.
I'm not talking about fighting right now because you're talking about hair. We didn't have our hair cut. We had long curls. So she didn't have to cut our hair. She used to comb it, put it up in rags. Now I use stockings nylon stockings sometimes for grandchildren, but I think she had rags that she put it up in rags. If she didn't do that, she would just curl it around her finger,
Wet it.
curl it around her finger, and in wintertime when we'd walk to school, they would probably be frozen. All of our curls would be frozen. I don't even know. I think Anthony cut Bob and Glenn's hair. Does anybody remember that?
Speaking about school, did you say you walked? I thought you rode a bus to school.
We
Aunt Malin.
I rode the bus.
You did?
Yeah.
Aunt Jerry, did you ride the bus?
Yes.
All growing up?
Sure.
You did not.
We walked to Centerville School.
Well, after 7th grade, I mean, then we rode the bus, but before then we went to one-room school.
The same school that our mother and our grandfather
Yes.
went to. And I was in the 6th grade when they said they centralized. Then we had to start riding the bus to East Canton.
And I was in the 3rd grade. I had spent my 1st, 2nd, and half of the 3rd year at the one-room school, and there were 3 of us in the 1st grade. Lois, Alan, Troy, Hannah, and I. And I remember my teacher's name was Malin Young. I still have a book he gave me in my 1st year.
The thing about a one-room school, though, it had a recitation bench.
Uh-huh.
You heard all of the classes reciting, so you assimilated some of that. And it was very unusual, but I think it was kind of good.
Yeah.
But
About how many students were in the one-room schoolhouse?
15, 20?
oh no,
Around there.
Not that
I
many.
think there were more than that. We had, I think, about 4 rows of chairs coming down this earth.
Yeah.
Maybe, I would say more in the neighborhood of maybe 20 to 30. That's a guess.
And then walking to school, was it very far?
It used to take us 15 minutes if we walked. And we would measure by telephone poles. If you ran one telephone between telephone poles and walked between the next, you could get there in 10
I didn't
minutes.
remember that.
Yeah. So
Was there a coal furnace in the middle of the room?
it was clear to one side. So if you sat by that, one side roasted and the other froze. So
Was there indoor plumbing?
No. Outside.
outside inconveniences.
Yes.
What about your house all growing up? Did you have inside plumbing and electricity and all that?
Yes.
Aunt Jerry.
We had inside plumbing and electricity. But I remember Grandma Henning. We lived here, and Grandma Henning and Grandpa lived here, and they had outside plumbing. You had to go to the house.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That was before she moved in with us after Grandpa died, apparently.
Yeah. It was.
Because I think I always remember her. When did you say she moved in?
When I was 3 months old.
So she was always with us when I lived there.
Well, the house that Mother and Dad built, it's the same age as I am. I mean, I always told people I had a twin.
Your
Then
house?
they found out it was a house I lived in myself.
But we had the conveniences. I mean, we had
Yeah.
inside, we had electricity, we had inside plumbing. You know, it was pretty up to date when they built it. Of course, we were sort of pokey getting phones, things like that.
We had a coal furnace with registers, and that warm air coming up was really warm. The upstairs was cold. Our windows would freeze over it in the winter time, and Mom would say, Jack Frost has been there, and we'd take our fingernail and make designs in the windows. We had an ice box. The iceman would come with his ice truck and his tongs and bring in this big glob of ice and put it up in the top. And on the bottom underneath was a pan. As the ice would melt, it would drain down there, and we had to empty it. If we forgot to empty it, it would run over. Then we had a mess. The coal stove had a reservoir on the side that kept the water very hot. Had a warming closet on the top. Dad used to put crackers up there all the time, and they were always fresh because of the heat. But boy, Mom could make good fried potatoes on that stove in an iron skillet. Delicious. But Just think, baking bread. She baked bread for all of us. Baking pies, cakes. No thermostat on that oven. You know, it was just a coal oven. It was hot. But I don't know how. She knew how hot to get it. Your turn.
Do you have anything else you want to add?
Oh no, we always had ashes too from the coal and that we had to clean out of the stove. Put them in the
Driveway.
And yes, we would put them in the driveway. And a lot of times in the wintertime, that was a big help when there was icy. You know, the driveway was icy and we had to get in with the car.
Did they have the crank car? Is that the Model T? Or you think crank from the outside? You don't
vaguely
remember?
that, but I think, yeah, they did. If it wouldn't get started another way, then they had to get out and crank it.
Did they ever call you girls out or all the kids out sometimes
in
to
the
help?
winter time when it had snowed and there was drifts, Mom would get us up and we'd go out and shovel so Dad could get out, get the car out and go to work.
And
That
sometimes,
was
I'm sorry, and sometimes when it wouldn't start, we'd get out and push
Yeah.
till we could get it down the hill, till he could get
And it
the
would
clutch
coast,
working.
yeah.
Yeah.
That would start.
That would be 5 o'clock in the morning. He'd have to get up.
5 a.m.
5 o'clock in the morning. That was early to get all 6 of us up.
That's what Glenn did.
And back to the stove. I don't know when it was. Who was working? You and Jerry, maybe Bob,
Yeah.
decided to give Mom a big surprise and buy her an electric stove.
Yes.
Do you remember that? We thought she'd be thrilled. And she
not-
was so
not.
unhappy with us, with you, with all of us. She adjusted, but she didn't like it. Isn't that something? We thought that would just be a thrill for her. Nope. So anyway, I guess do you have something to say?
Yeah, in the warming closet that you were talking about. Remember, Dad had peanuts with shells on all the time. Kept up there in the warming closet.
Oh.
How about ironing?
Ironing.
Oh. I remember using the flat iron that had the handle that
Yes.
you have to set it on the stove to heat it and then iron with it. I remember that. I don't know when we got electric iron, but I remember using the flat iron. That's what they called it, wasn't it? Flat iron. The iron part was down there and it was iron and the handle had a wooden handle that would attach to that so you could move it and iron with it. But when I was sitting on the stove, you took the handle off because it was wooden. And then beeswax. She'd clean the bottom with beeswax.
Yes.
We'd rub beeswax on it and then rub it over newspaper to get the bottom shiny
Right.
and clean.
Or wax paper.
Wax paper sometimes, yeah. That was good old days.
Well, we were talking about going to church. Can you tell me, where did you guys go? Did you go to church growing up? Aunt Malin.
Yes, we went to church. Mom belonged to the Reformed Church down in Robertsville, and Dad belonged to the Brethren Church on Route 44. So one Sunday we'd go to Mom's church, next Sunday we'd go to Dad's church for Sunday school. We'd all sit there, and sometimes we'd get thirsty and tell Mom, "Well, I'm thirsty, Mom," and she'd get her pack of gum out and break each stick into 4 pieces and pass it out to us. Yeah. I don't know.
When did you start attending Canton Gospel Center? Aunt Jerry?
I was about 15 years old, and I don't know. I think Mother myself. Did you go, Madeline, with us? I don't know. I don't think Bob did. Did you, Jenny?
Yeah, I did, and I thought Bob did too, but it all
You did?
started because of camp, summer camp. You know, we had never been to the Gospel Center before or even thought about it, but they had a wonderful camp, and I think maybe they made some financial arrangements for us so that we could afford it. And we went. I think, Jerry, I think maybe all 3 of us went.
Yeah,
Bob
we
and
did.
you and I. And
But, pardon me, Jenny.
it's all right. And he broke his arm,
Yeah.
I think, the first year there. And they took such good care of him, and they were, you know, so nice and so kind and everything about it. And we really liked Pastor Odell and the people there, and we wanted to keep going there.
So you started out going in the
Yeah,
evenings.
In the evenings.
Because our church, we never went to church in the evenings before our Wednesday night, but they had Sunday night services and Wednesday night services. So you all started going on.
So then instead of being faithful to 2 churches, we were faithful to 3 churches. Mom's in the morning one week and Dad's the next week, and the Gospel Center at night. And before we even started there, we tried a few other churches. We went to Ethel R. Willits. We went to something called the Lighthouse on the Hill.
Catherine Kuhlman.
Yeah. Mother, in her Reformed church, they made a mistake one fall, and they hired somebody to come in for their harvest meetings who was an evangelical Christian. And he presented the plan of salvation, and Mom really had a real experience with God. She always loved God. She was always conscious of Him, and He was always a part of her life. But that was a time when she made a decision. And she knew from the churches and every place we were going before we went to the Gospel Center, she wasn't getting what she needed. So that's the reason we tried out some of these other ones in between. But then when we started the Gospel Center.
So you each got saved one by one after you
Yes.
started going to the Gospel Center?
Mother and I, no. Mother and I think I was 8 years old. Mother and I went to Robertsville Reformed Church. They were having an evangelist, Phil Ward.
Phil
And-
Ward, that's right.
Mother and I went forward and accepted the Lord.
And I remember being saved, we went to these meetings. I think I don't know whether it was Ethel R. Willits or what, but they would have people get up and give a testimony about how bad their life was and how sinful they were and all the terrible things that they used to do, and then they accepted the Lord and everything was different and they felt like a new person. So I kept going forward because I knew I wanted to be saved, but I didn't feel like those people did. And nobody took the time to explain to a 11, 12, 13-year-old that if God says, if you accept my offer to become a Christian or to be a child of mine, I will do it. You went on feelings. You must have got tired of seeing me come forward. But finally I realized it was faith. So, you?
Well, I remember the main thing about Gospel Center, we didn't believe that you could always, that once you were saved, you were always saved. That was something that we never were taught before. Mrs. Odell, of course, Reverend Odell too, that was his message, but Mrs. Odell was a great teacher to us, and she showed us in the Bible, if God saves you, you are saved eternally. The Bible says, no one can pluck you out of my hand. My Father which gave you me is greater than anybody. And so we did learn through the Canton Gospel Center that God saved us for eternity, not just for as long as we were good. So that was a great reassurance to us through the Gospel Center.
Do you remember when you got saved?
I'm down at camp, Odell's camp, down at Lake Odell,
Is that Loudonville?
Loudonville, yeah, down on the other southwest of Worcester. Yeah.
Sorry.
I asked favorite food, or did you ever go out to restaurants? I also want to know price of things. So maybe what was the price of an ice cream cone long ago?
Nickel, 5 cents.
For 2 dips, wasn't it?
Yes, at Globe Dairy.
Blueberry.
That was our Sunday afternoon social event. A ride in the car, and then you'd have the smallest one.
Glenn,
Say,
usually.
my stomach hurts for ice cream.
Glenn.
And then they would act like they weren't sure if they were going to stop or not. And eventually they'd pull up to the Globe Dairy. And they'd come out. They had those wooden things with the little holes in for all the cones, and we could hardly wait. But that was our treat.
That's about all we went out to eat. I don't think we ever went out to eat other
We
things.
also went to Weiler's Dairy Oh,
Yeah.
that's on Second Street. And
It was ice
what
cream
it?
again.
Oh, gee, there was a ice cream place up on Cherry Avenue.
Get the name.
Yeah. I can't
About the
think-
same price?
Yes.
Yes, But I remember one time when Bob came home from the service, he took us there. We got one ice cream, sanitary dairy. I think. He got us one ice cream. Of course, it was double. And then he went back in and got us each another ice cream cone.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's nice.
do any of you remember that?
I know. He sent us each a dollar, a silver dollar with our birth date on it
Birthday.
when he was in the service.
Yeah.
I remember that. I used to iron his white shirts.
How about,
Norway.
let's see, what else? Prices of milk, a gallon of milk, or a gallon of gas?
Milk we got from Pete and Mary. Pete Anthony had some cows and he milked. So he'd always have a gallon of milk, crock of milk over there for Mom. Mom would go over and get it, carry it back. We'd skim the cream off of it and whip the cream. And I remember it was always a charge for Mom and Dad to have to pay that milk bill. I mean, he'd never, make her pay when she got it. She'd just go over there and bring a gallon of milk home in a gallon jar. I mean, crock. That's what it was in. Put it in an ice box. And that's what we'd drink with. She always had to keep that milk bill paid up. She'd get behind it and she'd have to pay that milk bill. That's what our milk was. I don't know how much it was if you bought it. You never bought it.
I thought I remembered that she had a cow. Did she have a cow?
Not
Did
when
she
I was
milk?
living there.
Oh. I seem to remember that, but
I think she did when she was a girl. I don't think she ever did. I don't remember a cow. Do you? You wouldn't
It
remember.
wouldn't have been in your time
That's
anyway.
right.
Would have been early.
She had a turkey. And
So
she
who
had
had-
chickens.
Turkey and chicken. So you didn't ever buy turkeys or chickens, you raised your own.
Right. Dad would kill them. Put the head down on the wooden block, take the hatchet, chop the head off. The chicken would run around. That's how you get the saying, run around like a chicken with its head cut off. Because it would run around until it finally collapsed. Then she'd stick that chicken down in really hot water, and then you could pluck the feathers. Then she'd save her postcards, and she'd light it, and she'd hold it up. Get all those little prickly things off, singe it. And then she had to take the insides out and all that stuff and cut it up. That's how we had good chicken. Good.
I remember big turkey gobbler Mother had. I'd go to work and I'd come home. Glenn was 2 years old. He could do anything with that turkey gobbler. But you know what? That big old turkey gobbler would flop me all the time.
Chased her.
Yeah, he chased me, and if you weren't running hard enough, he'd flop with his wings. That was
Scary.
terrible. It was scary. 2-year-old kid could do anything. Could even
So-
ride if he wanted to.
So who got a job first?
Well,
Bob
Bob did.
Bob? Uncle Bob, what'd he do?
Worked at
He went over to
Leaper's
Leaper's.
orchard,
That's right.
picking apples and helping keep that orchard up. And
He never went to college.
Afterwards,
And then Aunt Jerry, where did you work?
I worked at my first job was 5 and 10. 5 and 10.
oh yeah, Woolworths.
Yeah.
Jenny, what was your first job?
Oh, I remember we would take the bus after school and go in and work at Woolworths.
How old were you?
Probably 16. I don't think you could work before that. So
I worked there too, and on Saturdays, Dale Yoey picked us up and took us to work. We worked all day Saturdays, and we worked some evening. They weren't open much in the evening, though. How could we have done that?
well,
Well,
They were open
Monday evenings they were open, and
Mondays.
Saturdays.
Okay.
Monday and Thursday.
that was my first job. Oh, and of course we did babysitting and
Yeah.
mowing lawns. We mowed lawns for like 35 cents. Mowed a whole big lawn.
So who got married first? Of 6 kids, who got married first?
Wow. Robert James Robert. Mary.
Yeah.
James Rose Cook.
Jane?
Jane
Rose.
Rose Cook, thank you. Yeah. He's the one that got married first.
Who moved away first?
I think.
Jenny. Jenny did.
And where did you go?
I went to Moody Bible Institute in Chicago. Of course, I missed a lot of what went on after that, watching Madeline grow up and Glenn grow up. I mean,
What year was that?
that was 1947.
And what did you major in?
Christian education and music.
And then where was your first job?
Well,
There,
while I
away.
was at Moody, I remember one year I had, I think 10 W-2 forms came in, whatever. I dusted offices, I typed, I worked banquets, whatever I could do.
How did Grandma and Grandpa feel about you moving away?
My mother was always proud of what you did. I mean, our folks always made us feel good about ourselves. They were wonderful parents. If I could ever be as good as they, I would be happy. They were wonderful parents. Mother was delighted if I would do something for the Lord.
We thought she was going to come back home again after she got done with Moody. She met some guy out there. Became friends with him. Nothing serious.
What was
Just
his
friends.
name?
His name was Paul Edwin Holliday. So, eventually she married him, and Sharon was flower girl at their wedding.
Right.
Madeline was in the wedding.
Right?
It was in February. So the colors were
cold.
red and white. It was
15th
beautiful.
of February.
February 15th, right?
What year? I was wondering if you had a couple memorable things you wanted to say from growing up. Aunt Jerry, did you have something you'd like
I
to share?
remember when I went to Aunt Nova's, that is my dad's brother. And I went there for summer vacation or something. And I got bit by a poisonous spider. I don't know whereabouts it was I got bit, but I had streptococcus poisoning of the throat. And I was in bed for 6 weeks. I could not eat, feed myself, I couldn't move, I couldn't do anything. And then when I got well, the Christmas before, I got ironing board set. I had to learn to walk all over again. I took it apart, used the top for one crutch, the feet for another. And they didn't think I'd live.
So God was gracious.
Yeah, he was.
Aunt Jenny, do you think of anything
I
yet?
can't think of anything right now.
Mom?
No.
Grandpa, Dad used to take us out in the lawn. That was one of his big things. Put a sheet out there or something and lie there and look up at the stars. And he taught us the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper. So he must have been out there one night, and we were playing games around the table, and I was facing the living room door. And I forgot all about that. And all of a sudden, this big white thing comes in the doorway. It was Dad with a sheet over his head, and I was so frightened. I couldn't even talk. I know I just sat there and looked at him. I don't even know how he probably took the sheet off and laughed about it. I don't know, but that was Dad. Anything else anybody
No,
remember?
I just remember that too when he came in. It really did scare us. We were,
Aunt Jenny, if you ever did fight, what did Grandma tell you? Where did you have to go?
Oh, if you're gonna fight, go down in the cellar, or else go outside.
Yeah.
No fighting in the house there.
Okay, we're just about done. I was wondering, TV and radio, some of the inventions during your time. Did you have TV growing up or radio when you were growing up?
Well, we sure didn't have TV.
I remember Mom telling me that Dad built the first radio set we had. And we used to gather around it and put it on a table as if we could sit as close as we could, and we would listen to the great Gildersleeves,
Trevor McGee and Molly.
and we would have popcorn and apples for refreshments, and had a lot of good times around it. But I was very impressed with the fact that he built our first set. So,
We did not have television all the time we were growing up. We lived through that somehow, but we played games and just had a good time with each other.
Wondering how you heard about World War I. World War II, actually. Aunt Malin, do you remember
Well,
where you were?
we were over at Uncle Elmer and Aunt Nova's on a Sunday afternoon. We were playing
Peggotty.
Peggotty, and the news came over the radio that, how was it, that The United States was invaded. No, we weren't invaded. We were at
Japanese.
war. We were just at war. That was.
And then
We were young then, and it's kind of hard to realize what that meant.
Impact.
Yeah.
Of course, the war meant a lot more to us personally when Bob was drafted, and he served in the Air Force. He was gone for, what, 2 years? That made it very personal for us. We really missed him.
And he sent us each a silver dollar with our birth date on. I still have mine. I don't know if the rest of you do or not, but I thought that was really special for him to do that.
But I remember one Christmas too, that he was supposed to come home. I don't know if he was supposed to come home for Christmas, but we left our Christmas tree up till the
Right.
middle of maybe February till he got home, so we could have Christmas together. That was-
Okay, last thing as we're closing, would you go ahead? We want to get your names again, who you married, the marriage date, and your children. So, Anthony, would you go ahead and read to us Uncle Bob?
Okay, Uncle Bob, now you know he was born on August 7th, 1925, and he married Jane, it says Royer, Jane Rose Cook on March 14th, she was born on March 14th, 1947. That's when they were married.
Yeah.
I don't have her date
We don't
of
need your
birth.
This is the 20.
Okay, and their children were Sue, who was the first and only grandchild for quite a while, and she married Kevin Arn. And this is her birthday, December 10th, 1948. Then there was Jim. Bob's name was Robert James. Jim's was James Robert, and he was born on January 28th, 1953. Joel David, December 6th, 1954, and Bill, who's Shelley called Billiam,
It's William.
on September 8th, 1959. And
Hey, Aunt Jerry.
Okay. I married Tom Boyle July 15th, 1950. We had 3 sons. Jeff, who was born June 11th, 1954. David, January 28th, 1957. And Rick, April 6th, 1959. That's my 3 boys.
Aunt Jenny?
okay, I married Paul Holliday on February 15th, 1958 in Chicago. A lot of the family came and got snowbound on their way home
That's
in
right.
Michigan. But I was glad they were there. Sharon was my flower girl, and Aunt Madeline was in my wedding, and that was special. Kathy was born on March 28th, 1959. Christy was born on April 9th, 1961. PJ was born on July 7th, 1965. And by the way, the year Kathy was born, my first child, everybody was married, had to go and have a baby that same year. You know, Mom always liked the little babies and the youngest ones. So I only got her for a week, and then Jerry had to have her at home. So anyhow,
I'm sorry.
There were how many children born that year?
5. 5 children born that year.
What year was that?
1959.
1959. Mom?
I
Oh, wait a minute.
Of course, one of the things that is very important in my life was that we lost Paul. Paul died on February 25th, 1978. He died very suddenly in Ohio when we were on vacation. But I had my family, we had our family around us, and God was with us in a lot of special ways. But he was a great husband and father, and
You buried him
great
in
performer.
Louisville.
Yes, and he's buried in Ohio, Louisville.
I
Mom?
married Steve George Rigas, December 29th, 1951. Went to Japan November that same year and stayed with him, and we came home in June. Sharon was born September 1st, 1953. Sharon K. Rigas. Then Stephen Ronald Rigas was born May 24th, 1953. Shelley, that's not right? Yes, it is. No, you were 53. Ron was 57. Then Shelley was born August 14th, 1957. 1959, and Roxanne was born November the 20th, 1961.
And you got married, you were proposed, you got engaged and married in how long?
1 week. Ginny was home from Chicago for a vacation, and I worked at the A&P, and I worked up until Friday night, and got married Saturday night. I did my own blood test, but Ginny and Steve went and picked it up, and everybody thought he was marrying Ginny because she was with him all the time, getting everything ready. And the girls who were in the wedding went to Quebecers, and they had a rainbow wedding because the gowns that they had were the sizes of the girls that were in the wedding. It turned out really nice. Mom and Dad put an announcement in the repository and just invited all the friends that we thought. And I had a gown already picked out because I had gotten an engagement ring in November. Knew I was going to get married some year, so I put a wedding gown in layaway. So I had that, so that was quick. Then he left January 5th for overseas. He went to Japan.
Aunt Malin?
Okay. I married Del Weckbacher on December 22nd, 1960. In July the 15th, 1962, we had John Frederick Weckbacher. In 1964, December the 9th, Scott was born, Scott Allen Weckbacher. And then John passed away. He was killed in an auto accident November the 30th, 1959. 55. I'll get it out one of these times, yeah. So, here I'm saying 1955. It was 1995. So he's been gone.
Right.
November.
And then will you go ahead and read to us about Uncle Glenn?
I'll try. Glenn,
Francis.
our brother Glenn Francis married Jean Simon July the 2nd, 1955.
They ran away and got married, didn't they?
Yes, they eloped.
They did.
That's right.
Didn't you also? No.
No.
You got married
She
in
didn't have a
Japan?
church wedding, but she
Yeah.
got married. Yeah.
At Del's brother's place.
Oh.
Okay, Glenn and Jean had Lois Jacobs. She was born August the 9th, 1956. Then they had April Campbell. She was born April the 22nd, 1959. Gloria McClure was born February the 11th, 1964. And Heidi Chengit was born November the 26th, 1969. I think I have that right. Okay.
Thank you very much. We appreciate all your information. We'll cherish that forever. Thanks, ladies. Welcome to the Royer Boys. Time to get even with the Royer girls. You know, those 4 girls had all kinds of things to say 2 years ago. And it's Uncle Bob's birthday. He is 80 years old tomorrow. So this is August 6th, 2005. And that's the date today. And lots of us are together. So now it's time for the 2 boys to get even with their sisters. You ready? All right, you guys. I hear that you 2 boys got to share the room, and the 4 girls had to be in a room all by them. The 4 girls shared one room, and you 2 boys had the whole room to yourselves. Is that true?
No.
Where did you sleep in the house?
You started first. You were here first. You tell them where you slept.
Where did you sleep, Uncle Bob?
Only when Mom's mother came to live with us, they put an addition on the house upstairs. 1 room, which was about 4 feet by 8 feet, and had a single bed in. That was my room.
You slept
I don't know
there.
where you slept.
I slept in the crib in Mom and Dad's room.
Okay.
What happened when you outgrew the crib?
I didn't outgrow the crib until he left.
So there.
No, sir. There's only 11 years difference.
Well,
You left when you were 11?
No.
17.
You were in the crib till 6.
At least 6 or 7. I
Oh.
was in Mom and Dad's room. And then when you went to the Army,
Yeah.
that's when I got your room.
Good for you.
Oh, it was nice.
How old were you when you went there?
18.
I was drafted when I was 17.
And where did you go?
19th birthday,
Watch his sweaty.
I was told I had to report to Fort Hays, Columbus. And I left.
And where did you go after that? Did you have basic training somewhere?
Fort Hays, Columbus had a series of tests. And I was fortunate enough to do pretty good in this series of tests. And they assigned me to the Air Force. They sent me to basic training at Keisterfield, Mississippi. Took basic training there and a lot more tests. And because of the result of those tests, I was chosen as an aviation student, which was a primary first step in becoming a cadet. And I went from there to College Station, Texas A&M, and went to college there for, I think, let's see, up until April the 1st, 1944. And on April the 1st, 1944, we knew something was wrong because they always played always played Reveille in the morning. A bugler played into the loudspeaker. And that morning, he actually swung it. I mean, he got carried away, and we knew something was wrong because this was spit and polish down there. You walked at attention, you hated attention, everything was done according to the rules. But on that day, they washed out 144,000 soldiers out of the Air Cadet program. And I saw people that had given up their first sergeant stripes in the infantry. That day were sent back to the infantry. They completely eliminated the program. And they sent me from there to radio operator mechanic school at Scottsfield, Illinois. And from there, I was sent to Yuma, Arizona for gunnery. And from there, I was assigned an air crew and sent to Florida. And we trained with the B-17 crew for about 3 to 4 months. And I was slated to go to Savannah, Georgia with my crew, pick up a new B-17 and fly to England. And when that time came for that, we was all issued a pass. We got a furlough to come home. We knew that something was happening and the war was over shortly. So that was my career.
So what
in a
year
nutshell.
did you come home?
No, I was sent from there to Campfield, California, and we worked with a group of people at Air Transport Command, and the primary duty that we had was shipping the people over to the Pacific for the Manhattan Project, which was the first atomic bomb test that they had over there.
Do you know what year?
That'd be 1945. And I saw more generals and colonels and brass than I ever saw in my life shoveling through there. And I was discharged from the Army Air Force at Campfield, California. Came home on a bus. Closer I came to Ohio, the better things looked. Remember getting into Indiana and the rolling hills and the woods, everything looked like home.
Were you dating Aunt Jane at that time?
No, didn't know her.
Didn't know her yet. Uncle Glenn, what was your first job? Did you
My
work
first
at all?
job?
Mm-hmm.
AMPT company. A stock boy.
Did you get to help work in the garden?
Everybody got to work in the garden.
Got to.
I mean, you didn't get to help. You worked in the garden.
We got 2 cents a row.
Yeah.
2 cents
That
a
was
row, that's a lot
good.
of money. Aunt Jenny said she'd rather work in the house, so sometimes she didn't have to go out. Did you guys always work together
Didn't have
outside?
any choice.
That's it.
Did you ever wash dishes?
Every time that you had to, you washed it. Whenever it was your turn, you washed dishes.
How often did you do it?
Well, see, it's different. You got to tell them what you did because you were 11 years. You had.
Did you wash
were the
dishes,
oldest.
Uncle Bob?
I can't remember washing dishes.
Did you, Uncle Glenn?
Definitely.
The girls said they fought so much, finally they had to do it at a week at a time. And then wash and dry everything at the same time. All right, tell us about school. Did you really go uphill, walk to school and walk home every day? And how did that go, Uncle Bob?
Well, absolutely, the only way you had to get there. I don't know if the girls told you about this, but I can remember Mom always had long curls. Sometimes we walked to school and walked back home, and then those curls would be frozen stiff.
They did tell me that.
Did they?
Yeah. And whoever got there first had to get the stove going, or the little
Well,
stove in the corner.
Potbelly stove.
Did you do that?
Stove was not in the corner, it was about in the middle of the room. And I had a fire at the thing, but I think I got $3 a month.
Wow.
That was good money.
That's right, bought my first bike.
So did you ride your bike to school?
No,
No.
We're allowed
didn't
to.
have any.
That was after,
I had to fire the furnace to make money so I could buy one.
after the furnace was gone, then he got the bike, and they didn't need the furnace anymore.
Speaking about stoves, didn't somebody buy Grandma an electric stove instead of using the hot coal stove that she had? Maybe first, Uncle Glenn, you could explain what the stove looked like that Grandma and Grandpa used. Grandma used to cook in, and how she knew the right temperature.
After you were gone, Mom would let, my job on Saturday was to clean this stove out. Empty the ashes, clean all the ashes out, clean all the shit out, put the stuff you get underneath the clean all that shit out. And then you had to take that out and dump it in the drive, because that's the only way to cover up the ruts. And then I was allowed to put water in the reservoir. And then I could build the fire. As soon as I got the fire going real hot, then she let me put some coal in it. And then when it got really hot, she let me take the wax paper that we took off the bread
Put on top of it.
and on top and run it, and just smoke all over, but it made that top really nice and shiny and black. And I thought that was really great. But that was my job on Saturdays. But every night, there was somebody was in charge of stoking the furnace, putting the coal on one side, heaping it up. So as it burnt, it would burn up. So in the morning when you got up, there was heat. And the old furnaces didn't have any blowers in. It was all convection. If it got hot, the hot rose. Remember the register right by the fireplace between the dining room and living room? Everybody fought. The girls, when they got up in the morning, would come down, they'd be standing on that just to get warm.
The only place was heat.
Yeah. And I can remember mornings getting up and somebody forgot to stoke the furnace. It was
To build
cold.
the fire.
Had to build a fire.
But did you buy Grandma and Grandpa an electric stove?
Not that I know of.
Do you remember the time that we came home from church at night and Dad always came up the East Drive when we drove in the house? We always went out the west side of the house. We drove in the East Drive and all of a sudden we looked at the
Fire
Yeah.
in the basement.
fire in the basement. It was nice and yellow. And everybody got out and I think you and Dad broke the window and shoveled Mom's flowers in the ground on the fuel oil water heater. Had coils in it. It had that circular wick in it. And you could turn it and get the wick higher and higher. It would burn.
Yeah.
And they had one loop going into the furnace and coming back out when you had coal in there. That's where you had
See, the hot water we had was two sources. One source was a reservoir that he talked about. Beside the coal stove, there was a copper box, and that was up next to the firebox. You filled that with water, and the heat from the stove would warm that water, and Mom would use that hot water to make
whatever.
food, whatever. The second source, there was a pipe ran into the furnace, into the firebox, and back out to the hot water tank. Inside the furnace, you had another tank, and that water would be heated to go into the
Circulate.
tank, and then you draw the water out of there.
I got the bill of sale. Dad bought the first electric hot water heater. And it came in by rail at East Canton. He went and picked it up. And it sat up there on that ledge. And the window was a short hot water tank. That was, I don't know the date on that, but it's clever.
What'd you guys study in school?
Girls.
Speaking of girls, Uncle Glenn, what happened when did you graduate from high school before you got married?
Nope.
Tell us about that.
I fell in
Oh.
love.
With whom?
Lois Jean Simon. Jeannie Simon.
And?
Oh. She was a year class above me. And she had short red hair. And I noticed her years before her senior year. And her and her girlfriend were bike riding. And for some reason they came near my house. It was a hot summer. And I invited them up to the house for some hot, cold water. Went out and got them a pitcher of ice water and gave them. That's the first time she saw me, right, that she remembered seeing me. But I saw her a long time before she knew I was alive.
So eventually you did what? You eloped.
Well, I pestered her to death. She thought I was an idiot. She still thinks I'm an idiot. That's all right. But she finally decided to go out with me around Christmas, 1954. In 1955, her girlfriend and boyfriend eloped to Richmond, Indiana, and they came back in April and told her where to go and who to see and what to do, and we were going to go at Easter. And I was going to go stay at Tom Goodell's house. She was going to stay at her girlfriend's house. And when I was going to pick her up for school, her mom saw her suitcase and thought it was pretty nice. Yeah, I'd like to get one like that, and opened it up, and there was her birth certificate. So she found out about it, and she decided that we shouldn't get married until you graduate. Her talking to Jane. So we said yeah. And so her mom talked to my mom, which I never knew about until I talked to her mom a long time ago, recently, that they had agreed that we wouldn't get married until I got out of school and all this and that. So July the 2nd, we had an opportunity, and we ran away and got married. We thought we were going to live happily ever after, and so we went, got a hotel room, went over and got something to eat. While they were getting it, we went to the payphone and called my mom. And, what? Where you gonna live? So we had already rented a 2-room apartment, shared a bath, completely furnished. We cleaned it up. We told them where we were living. And they were all upset. Then we called her mom, and we were real happy. And they were upset. And so we went to eat, and then we couldn't eat because everybody was upset.
But you've been married how long?
50 years.
50 years. God's good.
They said we were too young. I was 18, she was 18. No. Yeah. She was 18 and I was 18 because I just going to turn 19 now.
Okay, Uncle Bob, where'd you meet Aunt Jane?
Where'd I meet her?
Uh-huh.
Blind date.
Blind date? Blind dates aren't supposed to work.
They don't?
How many years ago? How long have you been married?
48 years.
48 years. What?
Uh-uh.
How long have you been married?
Try 58.
58 years. Wow, that's a long time. Grandpa Royer going to school. Did he go to college to become a surveyor, or how did he learn that?
Well, I know that Dad took a correspondence course, from international correspondence course in Pennsylvania, as far as the surveying is concerned.
Did you ever help
Help? Yeah.
survey?
I helped him a lot. But he had to get a license from the state of Ohio. He went down to Columbus, took a 3-day test, and passed that and got his license.
And then both of you are good at building things, right? What did you build, Uncle Bob?
What did I build?
Yeah, since you got married. Or
Since
did
I
you
got
build this
married?
house or another house or?
Yeah.
What did you build in all your kids' houses? Did you build this house?
Yep. Everything except the plastering.
Uncle Glenn?
Well, you built the basement first,
Yeah,
then you lived in that,
yeah,
and then you built up the sides.
yeah,
And I helped you with the roof.
yep,
That's when it fell off.
yep.
I helped you with the
I
septic
didn't
tank.
push you.
No, I put a board up there and the guy was there and those were slick boards.
Yep.
All those boards.
Yep,
And let's see what else. You, then when your mother and father-in-law passed away, then Jim got it, you helped Bill enlarge that up there, didn't you?
yep.
Bill?
You did all the brickwork, didn't you?
Most of it,
And you did all the brickwork on this.
yeah. Susie and me.
Susie, wow. Who built Stephen Doris's house?
Well, I built a house out there, yeah,
15th Street?
15th Street. And, speculation, and, found I couldn't afford two mortgages, this place and that place. So I sold to Doris and Steve.
Ah. Last thing as we're closing, when did you get saved? Do you remember?
Go ahead first.
I was at Waddell Lake Youth Camp, campfire. I must have been 12 or 13. I can't tell you the date, I can't tell you the time, but I remember that around the campfire, I gave my heart to the Lord. But what really made it real was the summer after that. I knew, because Odell would preach that the Lord's coming back anytime, he's coming back. So it was in the afternoon, I was out playing, and I went to call Mom. I went down in the house, but Dad was at work and all the kids were not home yet or whatever. And I yelled for Mom. She didn't answer, so I went in the house, I went, Mom, 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 Mom. Upstairs, downstairs, bathroom, down in the basement. Mom's not around. I went outside and yelled, Mom, Mom, Mom. Mom's not around. I thought the Lord came, left me here. I realized if I'm saved, He can come. I go. All of a sudden, there's Mom. I asked her, I said, where were you at? Mom's right. No, you weren't. That's when I knew my realization of security in knowing that I was saved. Done, sealed, and delivered. That's so real. I built a treehouse. You remember me building the treehouse? That was after you were gone, but the girls, Jenny was in Bible school. I think Malin and Doris were still home, maybe. But Jenny would bring her girlfriends home, and they'd go up in the treehouse, and it was just something great between those three trees up there on the side.
I remember putting those bars between the trees up by the chicken coop.
Yeah?
We could walk on the bars clear up to turn her halfway up the hill.
I don't remember that. See, that was in your era.
Yeah.
Was that the Chuck Path?
Yeah. Clay mines.
Well,
They did clay out of there, didn't they?
no, iron ore.
Iron ore?
They called that little lane that went past Mom and Dad's house,
Yeah.
ore lane.
Or, yeah, that's right.
And they had a smelter, and we could find pieces of iron ore laying on the surface back there in that 84 acres that was put back into it.
Was that Uncle Howard's Acres?
No,
That was people off of Evening Star Road.
yeah, Zwick.
Zwicks.
Do you remember when you got saved?
Well, I can't name a specific time. I remember the time and where it was. It was down at the Robertsville Church, Reformed Church. It was
Who went to church there, Grandma or Grandpa?
Grandma.
both of them. We went there one Sunday and went to Center the next Sunday. Remember that? Center Church, our brother, and one Sunday where Dad was. Remember? Down there to Reformed Church the other Sunday.
The moment.
It was great at Christmas time. Get two treats.
Remember Elmer Frick
Yeah,
sang bass?
tenor.
Elmer sang bass.
He sang tenor.
Well, I'll tell you what, when I was little, I sat in the pew with him, and that whole pew just vibrated with his bass voice.
Yep.
Elmer, great big heavy set.
Yep. Black horn rimmed glasses,
That's him.
sang tenor.
By the time I got to him, he switched to bass.
That was the the longer years he was tenor. As he got older, he sang bass. All right.
Somebody else done it. His spirit was really making that pew just vibrated when he was singing.
All right, you
Well, didn't he
guys.
sing with the deacons? With the, wasn't he in a group? It wasn't it was the,
Push it, cut it off.
cut it off?
That's what this
All right. Well, yeah, that means we're gonna stop. But just as we're
Wayne
closing,
Moeller.
what was your dad's name? Full name? There's been some discrepancy. I just need to clarify.
My dad told me his name was Quinter Louisa. Period.
Well, that's it. What do you think of Glenn?
James Quinter Royer. I have documents that said it is. I have them, I'll show them to you.
That's all right. All I can say is that's what Dad told
That's
me.
right.
Because I asked him, that's what his answer.
But I got his war records and it's James Quinter. Right?
That may have been Elmer Frick's son that sang in a quartet. Wayne Moeller.
He sang bass.
Mom
When-
sang
when
tenor?
he was, yeah, he was saying, you know.
Your mom sang
somebody
bass.
was singing in a quartet, but I
Sweet
know
Adeline.
that Wayne Moeller sang in a quartet. And we used to go listen to him sing.
We've got a record of that.
All right, you
See,
guys.
you probably weren't there because you were in the Army, and every once in a while they decide we're gonna have homemade ice cream. And so we get ice, salt, and Mom would bring down the first batch with the mixer, with the batch, and we put it in, and we pack it. I remember you and I did that.
Aunt Malin, huh?
And we start cranking it. And we put the salt in, and we take a stick and we push the salt down into the, and of course, the more you did that, the colder it got as you cranked it. So one person would crank, one person would keep punching the ice and the salt down, so it made it colder and colder. There's a hole at the top, so a little bit below the top of the can with the lid, so the water would not come up to the lid portion, and all the water would run out. Of course, down in the basement, we had that drain there, and so then Mom knew how about, we'd tell her when it started to get stiff, and then she'd have something else that she'd make, and we'd take the top off and pull the top, and she'd pour some more stuff in it, and then we put it back on, we'd keep cranking it until that started to get hard, and we'd tell her that she'd have something else ready. She kept putting it in, putting it in, putting it in until it was full. Then we'd crank it, we'd get harder and harder, and then the whole thing would start to tip. So one of us would have to stand on top of it. And then we crank and crank and crank. We got tired. That person would get down. The other person would get on top. And we crank and crank and crank it until you couldn't crank it anymore. Then it was ready.
Yeah, it was worth it.
And I'll tell you what, it was the best stuff you ever made.
Never liked
I'm glad you didn't like it.
All
You
right.
weren't there.
it.
You're already gone.
Yeah, but we made homemade ice cream before I left.
Well, Mom got better making it. When she first made it, it wasn't that good, but boy, she learned the good.
All right, you guys.
See, you missed the good times. You got them all for me, I'm
I
sorry.
don't know. He had some good fun shooting at cows in the Arizona desert.
Yeah, that was,
What'd you do?
Yuma, Arizona.
well, I said I went to gunnery school at Yuma, Arizona. We were flying 50 feet off the ground
Oh, in an airplane?
in a B-17
That's
at
dangerous.
200 mile an hour. Yeah,
That's
it
really
was.
dangerous.
The pilot didn't know what he was doing.
I'm glad you had the gun then. Yeah?
And he said, shoot at whatever you want to shoot at. This poor cow was out there by himself in the desert. I think there were about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 50 caliber machine guns opened up. None of us hit the cow. You could see
Holy cow!
dust flying all over the place.
Good practice, good practice.
Something else.
These little cars.
Grandpa, you know, we were talking what his name was. I said, he told me it was Quinter Louisa, and he said it was James Quinter. Well, he's got documents also that says that he had an alias. He was selling cars up in Cleveland. His name was James Friendly.
James who?
Friendly.
Friendly.
Like, I'm a friend, Lee.
Guy. Friendly guy.
Yeah,
Grandpa sold cars?
yeah.
Never
Up in
heard of
Cleveland.
that.
Well, lots of things you
A lot
have.
of things.
Well,
you
you're
don't know
supposed to fill us in on those
Well,
things.
that's what we're doing. Yeah.
Keep it going.
Who was
We're
lucky?
rolling tape
Who was
here.
lucky, Roy? Was that Henry?
Lucky.
I knew that light.
No.
I've no
I was
idea.
lucky. I had a brother. Knew everything.
Wasn't there one?
Grandpa.
Didn't you have a
Was it
scooter?
Grandpa? I thought it was Grandpa.
Yeah, you said it was
Because I
Grandpa.
can remember helping you with your scooter. You had taken the cover off the scooter, and you were sitting right there beside the dining room bay window,
Yeah,
and you were working on it. And I can remember, man, that thing's fabulous.
it was.
Because I was little, but I mean, you were big and you could drive this thing, and I thought,
Little iron horse engine.
yeah. With a kickstart, you lift it up and it went down,
Yeah.
kicked on it.
Had a wooden.
I wish I had one of them now. I could play with it.
Yeah,
Couldn't play with it then.
too small.
You wouldn't let me.
That's right.
What year was that?
That was back in 1902. No, it had been 42,
Before the army.
41, 42.
Because that was when I was
Yeah, junior
grade
high,
school.
grade school.
so it was 38, 1938.
Gee, I was only 2 years old.
You're still in the crib in Grandma and Grandpa's room.
Yeah. I tell you, it's nice. But you know, the thing that I can remember about Mom, I don't know if she did this to you girls or not, or she always read Bible stories to me and prayed with me in my crib, and then even when I went into your room. So I had to be 11. If you went in 42, 44, I was born in 36, so I was 8 years old when I moved into your room, and I can remember her coming up and praying with me, and I can remember there was no heat in that room. You probably remember that.
Yeah.
And the blankets were about that thick.
Yeah.
And you get in there, and once you got it warm, you never moved. You never moved. Because that was warm right there.
I'll have to take you to figure that out.
One night. But let's see, what else? What else do I remember about you?
Was that Grandma's office off of their bedroom? Was that the room you're talking about?
That was your room first, wasn't it?
Oh,
That
okay,
one,
so that is the one you're
Grandma-
talking about.
Grandma Henning. Was it?
Well, the
Is it
downstairs or the upstairs?
Grandma Lot.
Grandma Lot. No, I can
That was
remember.
Annie, she married,
Yeah,
she married Frank Annie.
okay. But I can remember when she was in
Okay.
there and Dr. Davis would come
Yeah.
and do his house calls. And I'd go in there and watch him. And then he'd decide that she needed some medicine. And I can remember him mixing it.
Yeah.
And he'd take a swig of it. I remember taking a swig of it and giving it to her.
I never remember that.
I can remember, because I was there. I thought,
I'm gonna be a doctor.
because he had different bottles in his suitcase. He'd open it up and he'd pour a little bit of this, a little bit of this, a little bit of this, and this in. And then he put his thing on and he looked at it, put a cap on it, and said, "This was
Put a cork in it, no
Yeah.
cap.
cork." Must have been good
It's hot
stuff.
in here. Huh?
Yeah, you guys talking about?
We
all this
embarrassed
fun
you.
stuff.
Sharon has to go,
I'm headed, I need to go to Columbus. Keep talking.
but we're gonna keep going. So, one time,
Thank
I
you.
heard a story about, it was during the Depression when you guys didn't have food. You're down to your last potatoes or something, and doorbell rang and went to the door and there was a couple of bags of groceries. Never did know who dropped those off.
I remember that.
Well,
I'm setting you up for a good.
I remember that, remember Mott's greenhouse out here? Okay, John Mott's and Glenn Mott's lived at the top of the hill beyond Centerville School. and they were salesmen for Farm Bureau Insurance. And they always had pretty nice cars. I know they picked me up a couple times, brought me home from school. But anyhow, I can remember them bringing a 100-pound bag of potatoes and putting it on the back porch. In fact, I saw Mrs. Motts, who was about 90-some now, was working at the greenhouse. And I went up and talked to her, and I said, you know, I remember the time that you guys did that. And she just kind of smiled and said, well, you know, but that's the only thing I can remember. But we always have something to eat.
Do you remember whenever they delivered coal, bringing coal in, and
Oh,
they
yeah.
had the
Room in the cellar was designated for coal. They'd come in a big dump truck and they'd put a chute up and
just shovel it in,
fly down the chute.
fly in, wow.
Make-
Coal dust all over the place.
When did they go to oil?
Never did.
Yeah, they did.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can remember as a kid seeing oil, or the coal delivered.
Put the oil tanks inside the coal bin.
Oh, that's right,
Pipe
sitting
out
up
the
there.
window and filled it up there, and had a copper line run over to the furnace. But when you talk about stoking a fire, you'd shut all the draft off, put the coal on one side, so it would burn just slowly. So the next morning, you still have a fire,
See that
break
coal
it up
from-
with a poker and throw fresh coal on it. Open up the draft.
That would start to roar, and it just sounded so good.
Get so hot you
So
couldn't
Dad,
stand.
what's your earliest memory?
Well, I can remember this as plain as day. When the guy go to figure out what it was, I wasn't much, 2 or 3, I don't know, I have to figure it out again, but when my grandfather died, Grandma Henning's husband, Frank Henning, died at the farm next door. They had public sale and on auction. And I can remember being there, and there was this man, he had a wicker basket in front of him, like he had a couple clothesline ropes around his neck and holding it up. He had bags of peanuts in there, and he was selling them. Dad told me he was blind. He said, shut your eyes. And I said, come here, you know, I shut my eyes. He said, that's the way that man is all the time, he can't see.
Wow.
Boy, that picture just stayed with me.
Very impressionable.
Is that where you got that clock?
No, that was at an auction, the clock over there.
Yeah.
What's the story with that clock over there?
Well, that's another auction story.
Different auction.
When Grandma's Henning's brothers, who were 2 bachelors that lived together, died, they had an auction. But the auction was closed only to the relatives. So, you know, everybody went there. And they auctioned off all the stuff. And I was just, I don't know, 5, 6. Again, I'd have to look back and see when they died and see what time it was, but what day it was for the year. But anyhow, somebody started bidding on that and I bid a quarter. As soon as I bid a quarter, everybody stopped.
Amen.
I bought that thing for a quarter.
That's cool.
That's clever. Just the relatives auction.
And the same time, up in the attic, I got an Edison phonograph with the cylinder records, a diamond needle. And Mom used to play with that when she was a girl. The old homestead. I bought that. I forget what I paid for that. It's still up there. It still works for us, I know.
She,
No, it was mine.
well, I can remember her having one there, and we put the horn on
Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
big brace on the front, and then
Yeah.
it would be right on the horn, that, on the mechanism that went across.
Yeah.
I can remember putting it on, playing it. Is she allowed to play with your instrument?
Well, you were in the service.
Could have been.
Yeah.
Could have very well been.
Well, I hate telling you, but she used it a lot. Yeah.
Good for her.
It sounded good too.
Well, some of the stuff is pretty good, but some of it is pretty scratchy.
Well, to my ears then, I was used to scratchy. Got better.
Probably sounded bass to you.
Oh, yeah. I was a tenor. Remember at the Gospel Center? Dad was singing bass, and I was singing tenor over there on the other side. Then something happened to me.